Hello there, artist planners. I am coming to you because I wanted to show you some ideas for a planner that you can decorate in whatever fashion you feel like, but this might give you some ideas. There aren't a lot out there. I know you can Google art journaling, and that has helped me immensely find some ideas, but not specifically for planners. So any of you who have done any kind of crafts such as stamping or scrapbooking, card making, whatever, I mean, you can kind of see some of the supplies. I have a lot of things such as chalks, as well as watercolor paints, though if you're going to do watercolor paint you have to be very careful because the paper in the planners isn't very thick and it will tend to curl. So you kind of have to be careful with all of that. So anyway, as you can see, here's an idea of what we typically all look at. It's pretty plain, pretty boring. And a lot of us put up with that because we don't have time or ideas or don't think about the fact that maybe I could decorate it. I know there's a lot of those stickers or little tiny stamps that work well with that kind of stuff. But I wanted mine a little bit more artsy than just that. So we can even go to a page example of maybe yours looks something like that, where I have a little bit of a sticker and some writing all over for different appointments and stuff, but not really anything that shows some art. So I'm just going to flip through a few pages that I have done, and that way you can get an idea. I've used mixed media on a lot of things. So for example here I did sponging. I just used ink and sponged the sides, and then I used stamps to do some stamping. A good tip, if you've done stamping, remember that you're going to want to be able to write on these pages, so you don't want to cover them so darkly that you can't write on them and see what you've written. So a good tip with stamping is to stamp off first. So load up your stamp with ink, stamp it on a scratched piece of paper, and then stamp it. And you're going to see that in some of the other pages that I've done that doesn't come through as dark. Now, a lot of times in your planners, you're going to have some areas down here where it's just for notes or whatever, so that gives you a little bit more room to do some kind of bigger art piece if you want. Be a little more creative because you are limited in kind of the space or how dark that you make things. So there's one of the pages. Here's another one. Again, this is stamped with sponge kind of ink. Then I stamped some flowers, not painted, but inked them. I have a whole bunch of ink pens. And then I cut them out. So the leaves and the flowers itself are the actual pieces that I put on paper and cut out. These stems I just drew on. So something simple, but a little bit more creative than just looking at nothing. The next page, see how well I'll be able to turn these pages one-handed. I wanted to do something kind of simple. There really isn't that much, but it decorated enough. I don't feel like you have to go overboard on every single page. That seems a little bit too much. You might want a little bit of a break. So this is kind of a nice break, plus it's one of those, because it's the beginning of a month, it only has a few days that you're going to be looking at it, so it just gives your mind a little bit of a break there. Another one is I actually used some metal pieces. I've got gears, I've got a clock, I've got some keys, as well as some clock stamps. I do like to use chalk because it can be done very lightly. So all of the background, the brown and the black, was chalk that I just put on my finger and rubbed it across the page. So you can make it as dark or as light as you want, and it makes it very nice for covering things like that. There's another one. Again, I used ink to stamp all over, and then I used a stamp for the grass, and then I stamped a butterfly all over the place and colored it in. Pretty simple. Here's another one. I used an ink. Actually, I think I used chalk around the edge of this. You can use an ink pad if you've got the right color that you want. That's the nice thing about the mixed multimedia stuff is that you can use different things. Normally I would have used an ink pad because it would have given you a really sharp edge around that very edge of the paper, and then you could have faded it in, but I didn't have the exact color that I wanted, so I just used chalk. So at least you can still see it, but it's not quite the effect I was going for. And then I used stamps to fill in the rest. I do have some stickers on here. As I mentioned, I've got a lot of stuff from scrapbooks. That whole bag is full of pages and pages of stickers from scrapbook stuff, so I've been using them on my pages as well, which you're going to see here. Stamped across the top, stamped the fence piece, and then all the rest of that are stickers. The flowers, the little bugs. So, something simple, but, you know, it's amazing what you can do with some of your stickers. Cut them up, peel them off, put them in the way maybe you weren't planning to use. If you've done scrapbooking, you know how creative that you can get. Let's see here on some of this other stuff. Here's another example that I was mentioning. You can't see the design very well. It was a really large flower stamp that I did do several different times. It wasn't like it covered a whole page. I had to do it a couple times. But I stamped off first because even though my ink wasn't that dark, it was going to be too dark. And I wanted to be able to see whatever I had written on that page. Next one, mostly stickers. The grass at the bottom was a stamp. All the rest of it are stickers. And they're not all from the same type of sticker. I took probably 3 different sticker pages and went to town. A lot of fun, a lot of fun. Here's another one. We're going to go see a concert, so I put the music note on there. And then I wanted something a little bit more, so I did a lot of flourish types of stamps. Very, very simple. This one's a little bit more fun because we're going to be going to Disney World. Big old stamp, or sticker I should say. I did chalk and stamp the background very lightly so I could see over it. Used actually a little glitter. Thought I'd want to be a little bit more creative on that page. Then we have this page, very simple again. I don't know how many of you have done this, took a stamp. So this whole thing right here is one stamp. As you notice, it's got several colors in it, or at least 2. So I used my ink pens, colored up the stamp for the flower part, then colored the petal and the stem, then stamped off a little bit of ink, and then stamped it on my page. Did the same thing for these ones too, I just used a different color. So there's a lot of variety in what you can do. Let's see what we got next. All right, here's another idea. So it's kind of hard to see, but if you're in person, it shows up a little better. These are actually stamps that I have embossed with white. I know it doesn't look like it, but they are. Once they're embossed with white, obviously you're not going to see it, so you can take chalk or ink and rub it. So you either have to have some kind of tool, because you don't want to just rub the stamp over it, or your finger, which is what I ended up using, over the embossed parts. And it does make the flowers show up. They're showing up a little bit better there. It does make them show up and gives them a little bit of color. Again, just something a little bit different than what you might do. Next one. I had a lot of fun with this. Used a stamp, a sponge to sponge around the back. And then I used stickers along here for these. All of these are actually stickers, but what I did was I put all of these on some cardstock, cut them out, and in some cases like here, I just put them on, I just glued them on and drew some little squiggly steam lines coming out. This one is also just glued on. These two, you can probably see a little bit better now, they are on puffy squares. So they stick up off the page a little bit. The tea that's pouring out of them was just some idea that I came up with. It's a piece of wire, it's pretty flexible, that I put just a tad bit of like glue stickiness to it, and then wrap some embroidery floss all around it, round and round and round and round and round until I ran down the line of the wire that I wanted to use. And that way it's bendable and I could shape it to what I wanted. Then I glued it to the spout, glued it to the teacup, and then plopped it on the page. So, a lot of fun, a lot of different ideas there as well. Here's an example of painting. Now, I did do this straight on the page. I didn't use a lot of water. You can see it's a little darker. I still think I'll be able to write on here and see it. If you do use a lot of water with a watercolor, you're going to have to do it on watercolor paper. Because this did curl a little bit. It's a little stiffer, but it's manageable the way I did it. Most of it is paint, but the birds are stamps. So again, I'm mixing my medias. Here's another idea of flowers, because we're still kind of in spring, of making them hearts. Kind of a nice little thing. The grass at the bottom is the old like laser die cuts. So that was some of my scrapbooking stuff, and I just used that as my grass. Okay, so here's a page that I did with paint as well. The page on the right is using watercolor paper. You might be able to tell because I only have one box at the top for the date because it's the end of the month. So I just drew that on myself. Part of it's watercolor, part of it's chalk. I wasn't getting really the desire. I'm fairly new at the watercolor stuff, so I wasn't getting the desired look. It looked kind of bad. This may not look the greatest to you. It's more, abstract, a little bit more of that than anything, so it's meant to kind of look that way. So the tree over here, and this tree here, and this little bit of background, some of the background, and the grass running here, the path, that's all paint. The rest of it is chalk. I feel I can do, personally right now, I can do a better job at blending and keeping the colors, the shade I want, as well as where I want when I do chalk. If I practice a little bit more with watercolor, I might get better at it, and then I will be able to use that as pages. If I did some kind of scene, which I do have one in mind, we'll see how it works, that requires both pages, or at least all the way across the bottom, then again, I will use the watercolor paper like I have here, and just fill in the squares by myself. So there's that idea. Then I think I've got a couple more to give you some ideas with. Oh, just something fun with bubbles. I've seen this on the art journaling, and I thought I wanted to incorporate it in my page. So just did a few in there. Just something fun and simple. And again, you don't have to have a lot all of the time. Here's another idea of something that's fun, simple. We're getting summer months. Doesn't have to be a lot. Most of this is stickers. I do have some of those laser die cuts on there, so I've mixed some stuff up, but it all works together because it's the same theme. So that helps as well. So anyway, I think that's as far as I've gotten so far. I've been frantically working for quite a while. So hopefully I gave you a lot of good ideas, something to at least get started with, and hopefully you will get creative and get all your extra stuff out there and start going to town.